Okay, hey everybody, welcome to the Mr. Olympia or Not webinar. Where I'm going to be revealing the worst kept secret in a very long time, which is how I got on competing at the Natural Olympia competition in Vegas last week. For those who don't know me, be surprised, but my name is Dan Storey. I am an author, trainer, coach, and now Mr. Olympia competitor. So I'm trying not to give the game away. But in this call, I'm going to be talking you through effectively my journey. How did I get to Mr. Olympia? How did I even start the journey? What was the process that I went through? How does that all tie into this book, Personal Transformation Blueprint, which we'll talk a little bit about, and ultimately how I got on and some of the lessons that I learned along the way. I think any journey that you go on, especially when you challenge yourself, there's going to be lessons that you learn along that way. So happy to share some of those and insights, some of the bits and pieces that arose, some of the surprises maybe, and ultimately anything that you want to know, just put it into chat and ask the questions. I've got a couple of questions already, which we'll cover at the end, but any questions that come along during the way, we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so you guys should be able to see the slide deck. And let's talk about the Mr. Olympia or Not results. So here we go. So the first thing you're going to see there we go, is a nice medal in my hand, which is, I'm pretty happy with that. If you look very closely, you'll see that is actually a silver medal. It's a silver medal. So long story short, I came second. Am I happy with that? I'm very happy. We'll talk a little bit about what second place means as we get to that part of the conversation. But yeah, straight off the bat, second place, second in the world. That means I'm the second best physique athlete in the masters category for an amateur athlete in the world. So I'm still getting used to saying that. It feels kind of weird. It feels kind of, like, oh, well done, Dan, pat yourself on the back. But I guess that's the situation. That's the reality of the world that I now live in is, I'm not the best, but I'm certainly up there in the top levels of this sport, which, I've learned to love and appreciate over the time that I've been competing now. So we're going to talk about that. You'll see kind of I'm representing for the INBA here as well. So I've got my kind of nice swag that I picked up there. Obviously, the arms are out. You'll see that there is still a little bit of fake tan in places, especially around the older knuckles where things take a little bit of time to clean out. But very happy with that. Yeah, so that's not my normal skin color, for those of you who are wondering. But yeah, very happy. Let's talk about the journey. Let's talk about where this all started and what that journey really looked like for me. And I use the word journey intentionally. It says here, it's good to have an end to a journey, good to have an end to journey toward, but it's the journey that matters in the end. And this is something that I think I really appreciated the day after the competition, is that we aim for these things in our life, and we put a lot of elements up on a pedestal. We think that when we get there, things will be different, things will change, things will suddenly mysteriously all kind of connect together, and our life is going to be transformed. That not necessarily just in a fitness goal, but let's say we're aiming for relationships or a job or doing a business or creating a piece of art or whatever it is. We often put this element onto a pedestal and we say, once that's done, then there's going to be something that comes after that. And actually the reality is very different, very different. The day after the Olympia for me, I was, back to being a dad and kind of going for ice cream and taking my daughter shopping and trying to treat her and seeing mermaids and crazy stuff like that. It's Vegas, man. What are you going to do? So keep this in mind as we go through this. I think goals, I've always talked about goals, and I think goals are so important. We need to have them. But if we're not understanding that, a goal is a fleeting moment on a longer journey, then we're going to set ourselves up for stress, disappointment, all of those aspects. So a great quote here by Ursula K. Le Guin. Keep that in mind. I'll probably mention the word journey a few times as we go through this. So question number one, let's go right back to the beginning. This is the picture that kind of started the whole thing for me. And the question is, who do you see in the mirror? Who do you see in the mirror? Now this, if you listen to any of my podcasts or anything, this photo for me is where everything kind of really started to come together from a bodybuilding perspective. I'd been training, I'd been working out, I'd been taking things a little bit more seriously in the gym. But when I looked at this photo, there was a few things that hit me. And, I've spoken to people about this since, and, they've seen the photo and they're like, you know what, Dan, that's not bad. That's not a terrible situation to be in. And I would have to agree. This is what I call average. This is average, right? This is average. This is, your average middle-aged man. He's got a comfortable job. He's, got a family. He spends far too much time with his mum's eating the food. All of those kind of things. Very, very comfortable. Okay, very average. And in my book, I talk about this idea of the trap of average. So when things are average, there's no motivation. There's no drive to go and do anything better, right? Things aren't good enough that we want to say, yay, everything is amazing, everything's perfect in life. But things actually are not bad enough to say, you know what, I've really got to create a change. So we get stuck in this kind of trap of average. Nothing too good, nothing too bad, just simply average. We exist. And we look around, we've probably got average friends, we've got other people in a similar situation. Our peers definitely dictate a lot of what happens in our lives. But this is average. And, I was one of those kind of people that, as a speaker and a trainer, I'm often encouraging people to go beyond average. I'm trying to get them to be the best of themselves. I'm trying to get them to challenge their limitations and do things that they're not comfortable doing, but it's going to help them grow. And, I realized that I had nobody else holding me accountable to that. I had nobody challenging me to say, okay, well, Dan, you say this, but you're doing it. And that was a weird moment. And as I look at this photo and I see it now, I just see someone who's full of excuses. Someone who, you can say, oh, yeah, but Dan, you could do this. And I'd immediately be able to come back with a reason why, I know, but it's not the right time. Or, I've got a lot of other things going on. And actually, do you know that this is happening right now? You probably don't know about that, but this is a good reason. And, excuses are great. Excuses are great. They give us something to pin reasons on so that we don't have to do things. We don't actually have to live up to the pressure that we're experiencing. And it allows us to let that pressure off. And when I talk about pressure, I'm talking about internal pressure. Many of us, if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that there's some form of inner drive or inner kind of expectation for yourself. I should be doing more. I could experience more. I'm better than this. All of that kind of language that goes on in our head. And when we use excuses, we actually dissipate that energy. We allow it to kind of just filter off and kind of go into the distance rather than harnessing that energy and saying, you know what, let's do something with it. All right, let's do something with it. Because that requires accountability. It requires us to expect more from ourselves. It says, let go of those excuses. And so excuses are only good for one person. They're only good for you. You've probably been in a situation where you've heard conversations, you have conversations with friends, and you ask them why they're not doing something. And they've given you an excuse, and you didn't believe it, but they believed it. And that's all that matters, right? It's only the person giving the excuse that needs to believe it for it to be effective. And when I look at this photo, I see a guy with a ton of excuses. Yeah, you're working hard, but why aren't you challenging yourself down? Why aren't you seeing what you can do, how you can get out of average and really see what you could accomplish if you did something? And so it was a weird moment, right? But we have these moments in life. We have these kind of turning points or trigger moments in our life where something happens. And typically it's either internal or external. For me, I was lucky. It was internal. It was something that I realized for myself that was a kind of kick in the butt that needed to change. But for a lot of people, it's external. I mean, if you leave something long enough, typically on a timeline, either you change it or the world changes it for you. From a health and weight perspective, it's, you either decide today to go and get healthier and eat healthier and all those kind of bits and pieces, or a little bit further down the line, you have an injury or some kind of disease or some kind of condition, or, your heart has a little murmur, or, hopefully nothing more serious. But it's those moments that make you say, okay, well, I probably should do something about it. If you're in a relationship, maybe it's not that bad, maybe it's not that good. You can take action and do something about it, or you can wait for the other person to say, you know what, I've had enough. And then the world changes around you and you're forced to create a transformation. Or, you're at work and you don't like work and you're really not enjoying it and you kind of grumble a little bit, but it's not bad enough to change. But then, that grumbling turns into moaning, turns into complaining, turns into something a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, all the people that you work with get sick of it. Your boss and your manager and, the leaders get sick of it. And they say, well, it's probably time for you to go and find some other employment. And they change the situation for you. So we either do something ourselves, hopefully we have this realization, or we find at some point, however long it's going to be, is that the world changes for us. So, if you look at a photo like this, where, you've got similar situations in your life, it's about looking in the mirror and not rose tinting, like not making it seem overly optimistic, but actually seeing it for what it is and calling yourself on your excuses. So this is kind of what triggered it all for me. And, what it did is it kicked off a journey where I thought I better, go and see what I'm capable of. What am I capable of? So the reality is I'm not very capable of much. At the beginning, and this is something that, you kind of got to figure out is, be prepared to suck at something new. I love this quote, is that I was not very good at being a bodybuilder early days. If we go way back to the very earliest of days, you can see there at the top right, that's me back at Loughborough College. A friend sent me this photo. I was actually used as the photo. I don't want to say model. It's probably a far stretch to use the word model, but I was the example of how to do certain gym exercises in the fitness trainer manual that they used to teach people at Loughborough College how to be fitness instructors. So that's me from back in the day. If you can zoom in closely, you'll see that I had shaved hair at that point. Figured it was time efficient. There's a few other bits on here. There's a weight graph. You can see things change slowly. I think my face might be in a way, but there's a bit where it kind of goes up and then down, and I'm like, oh no, what happened there? And it doesn't go smoothly. This is something we've got to realize, is that you're learning along this early way. Is that okay? Some things are going well. You have a little bit of beginner's luck, but then it gets a little bit harder, and you're like, oh no, what's happening? And this is kind of part of the change curve. Is we've got to realize that at the beginning, beginner's luck counts for a lot, but then after a while, you kind of got to really put some effort in. The one at the bottom. That's me in the early days. I had no idea how to stand, how to pose, how to do any of those things that, a physique athlete is supposed to do. But, I kind of took photos of myself in the mirror, and this is kind of weird to look at. But, this is part of the journey, is you don't come out looking like one of those people in the image on the right. And that's actually my vision board. I created a vision board. I wanted to know what I was aiming at in terms of this journey. Like I said, there has to be an end point, and these are some of the best athletes in the world. Now, one thing I've realized along the way is that I'm a natural athlete. I don't take any performance-enhancing drugs, and as I look at a lot of those images, there's a lot of people who have taken a lot of things on there. So comparison is really tricky in a space like this, and comparison, is a great tool. We'll talk about it probably a little bit more in a moment. But when you look at this, you've got to harness that anticipation, that disappointment, that frustration, and use it positively. So I know that there's a journey that I can go on to get to all of those physiques. And along the way, it's gonna take a little bit of time to get there. But if I'm on the path, I'm on the path. The picture on the left, that's me giving a presentation. This was in London. And the reason I put this one on is it was the first time I'd introduced myself as a bodybuilder. It felt super weird. When you do those kind of intro slides, say, hey, this is Dan, I'm a credible speaker on the topic of sales and influence. Put my credibility up there, the companies I work for, the book that I've written, all of that kind of stuff. And then I put a picture of me in the tracksuit saying, I'm also a natural bodybuilder. And I remember the words coming out of my mouth going, bah, it just felt wrong. Let's just say it felt wrong to say. But I said it. And the reason I did that is because when you start a journey, when you start on kind of this path of doing something, regardless of what it is, and I'm experimenting now with a different intro, and I'll kind of share that in a moment. But you got to say it before you are that thing. This is part of the journey. I think Muhammad Ali said something along the lines of, I said that I was the greatest long before I stepped in the boxing ring. It's this idea that we've got to be able to see things. This is the importance of the vision board, is we've got to be able to see the end result as a possibility before we start on the journey. If we don't see it as a possibility, if we don't believe that there's a way that we can get there, no matter how hard, then we're never going to get there. We've got to separate the how from the why. We've got to make the decision and then make the path. We've got to do those two things separately. But there's always going to be this element of awkwardness. And I remember introducing myself as a bodybuilder. I hadn't done a bodybuilding show. I trained a little bit. I was dieting and things along those lines, but I had no bodybuilding. And so in my head, it's like, Dan, you're a fake, you're a fraud. What are you doing? You're lying to these people. And imposter syndrome and all these elements kick in, and you're like, what am I doing? But I knew I was on the path. That's the thing. I knew I was on the path, and I knew that I had to start saying that I am a bodybuilder. The words I am and everything that comes after that are so powerful. Like, they're so powerful. We start to believe the things that we say about ourselves. So, use these words carefully. If you say you are a procrastinator, guess what? You are going to procrastinate. That's the thing. We'll live up to those identity elements. So state what you are. Right now, I'm saying I am an author. I've written 2 books. One of them is here, The Personal Transformation Blueprint. We'll get to this in a little while. I wrote a sales book about 10 years ago. That's how long it took me to write the second one, Trauma. But, I'm writing my second personal development book, and I have the third one I'm already planning. I know what that's going to be already. So I'm a self-help author. I'm a personal development author focusing on behavioral change and the psychology behind behavior change. And I'm starting to get used to saying that. Like, do I have a lot of reference points? No. Am I going to do it? Yeah. If you see me in 2 or 3 years, am I going to have a whole bunch of books? Most likely. Yeah. But if you look at me now, still early on in the journey, it's something that's tricky to say. And technically, I'm still fairly early in the bodybuilding journey as well. So this is important. If you are thinking about starting on a journey, whether that's, career, business, relationship, creation, and art and expression, speaking, training, whatever it's going to be, guess what? The first one is going to suck. The second one is going to be a little bit better if you get the feedback and you listen to it, but it's still going to suck. Ernest Hemingway said the first draft of anything is shit. So as a writer, I know this. I know that the first draft is one that I've just got to get out and type it as fast as I possibly can, because the work is done in the second draft and the edit and all of those things. So be prepared to look at something new, and just, like I said here, laugh at yourself. Don't take yourself seriously. Take the journey seriously, but learn from every experience and get that kind of feedback coming in. So that's important. It's not going to happen. I think one of the biggest things that I learned early on was this relationship with food thing. So a lot of people, and there's been questions about this already, is, hey, Dan, what do you eat? And, bodybuilding and the kitchen, they go hand in hand. There's no way you can do one without the other. There's no way you can go to the gym and train with intensity without matching the effort in the kitchen. And if you want to compete, if you want to kind of get to your best physique, then those two go hand in hand. My brother said, you can't out-train a bad diet. I remember those words. And so, finding a way to make your diet supportive is challenging, And I think one of the things that I learned over time, and we'll talk about these pictures in a minute, is I actually weighed every meal for about 14 months. For 14 months, in my kitchen, I had the weighing scales, right? And I'd weigh the amount of oats that I would eat for breakfast in the morning, or the amount of rice that I would have for dinner, and how much a chicken breast weighs, and I'd be kind of slicing little bits and pieces off to make sure that I got to the weight that was allowed. 30 grams of oats, I'd be taking one oat out at a time. I wouldn't be, like, that's excessive, but you kind of get the idea. And one of the things that I realized is that portion size is crazy. Portion size is crazy. And I've done enough of this behavioral science thing and nudge theory to know that the size of the plate counts. If you have a smaller plate, you'll feel that you've got more food on it, even if you've got less food. It's, there's a psychological element. But I like food. Like, I really like food. This was one of the hardest parts for me. And honestly, the beginning of the journey, I didn't know if I had the discipline to match this level of requirement on the other side of training. I knew I could do the training part. I trained hard. I lifted heavy and those things in the past. But the question was, did I have the discipline with food? And so I had to find a way to make it enjoyable. I had to find a way to make it fun. And if you don't find a way to make it enjoyable and fun and part of the journey, and you always feel like it's work, it's going to be really difficult to succeed with anything on that journey. So, this is me trying to make breakfast fun. I think each of these breakfasts that we can see here has about 50 grams of protein. We're not going to talk about nutrition too much, but, if you're going to do anything as a result of today, is increase your protein and decrease your fat. That's all I can say, is increase your protein, decrease your fat. And breakfast is a great way of kind of getting a head start on your protein intake. Sorry, there's a little prop I'll show you in a moment. It's just sliding around over here. And yeah, so each of these is breakfast. There's a few obvious ones in there. There's the protein pancakes at the top with a little bit of cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is like food of gods. You can see black coffee features heavily in most of the pictures. can't say that coffee is not part of my diet. It's a major part. In fact, I've got one here that I'm just enjoying as we're having this conversation. So there we go. But look at the other ones. They actually look kind of attractive. I think there's some kind of yogurt parfait up at the top there. There's a nice looking omelet there with some spinach. There's probably some, I don't know what's in that. Maybe some salmon, it looks like. I've got another yogurt and granola thing. I do love a little bit of yogurt, not going to lie. And if you mix protein powder in, the protein content goes up so much. Just some plain vanilla, if you want it. Or, I'm a big fan of cookies and cream protein. So that's kind of a big feature on mine. I have a massive sweet tooth. But then again, you can go savory down the bottom. That's like a chicken sausage bake, if I'm not mistaken. So, you got some vegetables in there. You got some eggs. Probably no cheese, maybe a tiny bit of, something maybe feta-ish or something like that, lowish fat. But again, you can have some fun. Like the one at the bottom right is a picture of my kitchen floor. A friend of mine says, "Hey, have you seen that, fish and a rice cake video?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've seen it and I live that." And, Bassa fillets from Aldi in the UK were a massive part of my diet. I'm not going to lie, because it's super low fat, it's very high in protein. And I guess you just have to learn how to season things. Fat and sugar are the cheat codes of any cooking endeavor. But if you don't have those two as an option, then, you've got to kind of learn what your spices are doing. So I think this is it, is relationship with food is super important. But again, think about this from a different perspective. Let's say, you're starting a business. What's your relationship like with sales and marketing? How do you feel about self-promotion? A lot of people don't like it. I'm not a massive fan of it, and I'm trying to do more things to be self-promoting and kind of get more messages out there regarding my book, but still don't like it. But how do you feel about negotiation? If you don't like it, it's going to be a tough part of the journey. If you want to be an author or a creator or an artist or something like that, how do you feel about feedback? Well, you can't grow without feedback. You've got to learn to appreciate it. You've got to learn that all of these elements are part of the journey. And so finding a way that, you can make these things fun, take the seriousness out of it, is going to make sure that you stick to the journey a lot more. It's not going to feel like hard work all the time. So be playful, be a little bit kind of cheeky with things and find a way to do it. If you're making sales calls, find a way to make it fun. Add in word of the day or something along those lines. That used to be one of my favorite things to do with salespeople. Let's get a word of the day in that people aren't going to understand, but it makes our life a little bit more enjoyable. But yeah, if people often ask me what's one thing that they can do to kind of get started, is, food is a big part of things. You either increase your food if you want to gain weight, you decrease your food a little bit if you want to lose some weight. But check your macros and start weighing food. I'd say the first thing, weigh your food, find out what a real portion is like, and let that retrain your mind in terms of how you go about things. Anyway, enough talk about food. Let's talk about the first competition. So eventually it got to a point after these 14 months that I got to step on stage and for the first time call myself a bodybuilder. The picture at the top there is my very first show. That's PCA. And then at the bottom is my second show. That's UK DFBA, the UK Drug-Free Bodybuilding Association, which is the kind of main one that I wanted to be part of. The PCA is untested. Now, as a natural bodybuilder, that means I'm up against people like Chris on the left, who is using performance-enhancing supplements and things that are going to help him train harder, grow faster, and all those kind of good bits and pieces. No judgment. If I had the expectations for myself to go a little bit further, then would I use performance-enhancing drugs? I don't know. Right now, my goal is healthy, natural competition. And longevity for myself. There's pure selfishness. I think there's a lot of good things that these chemicals can do, but there's also a lot of harm, and I'm going to stay on the healthy side of the equation. But let's talk about these two. Why have I put two up there? Well, the one at the bottom was the one that I wanted to enter. That was my first natural competition, and as you can see, actually in that one I placed third. You can see a little trophy there, but I'm up against two phenomenal athletes. I'm up against two of the best natural athletes in the UK at that point. And, I don't think I'm out of place, but I learned a lesson in that situation. But the question was, did I want that to be my first competition? Did I want to step on stage with the best natural athletes in the UK and this also be my first competition and not know what goes into a show day? And the answer was no. I wanted to get one under my belt. I wanted to kind of go through all the backstage things. I wanted to know what a show looked like. I wanted to know what to expect. I needed to do all those aspects. I needed to get one out of the way, right? And so that was what the PCA was, one. And I look at my posing there, and like I'm very blocky, and I'm in decent condition, but I'm not in proper show condition. But I learned a load. And I remember being backstage at that event and worrying to myself that, as a natural athlete, I was going to feel small or dwarfed in comparison to some of these like enhanced athletes. And I remember kind of going upstairs. It was a mad panic. It's like, oh, go here now and do these things. And I'm freaking out. And my brother's telling me, he's my coach, chill out, don't sweat. I've got fake tan on there. You don't want it sweating. And that was it. So I learned what the adrenaline, the panic, the stress was going to be like backstage, so that when I got to my first show reel, the one at the bottom, I could relax a little bit. I had the experience, I had the knowledge of all those things that were going to come in. So here's, the reason I put this up is if you're going to compete, if you're going to challenge yourself, is find a way to test yourself a little bit beforehand. Get all of those nerves and those butterflies out of the way in a situation where it's not going to be critical, mission critical. A lot of people, my background is sales training. A lot of sales training goes into trying to prepare people for big meetings and big presentations. And it's funny that salespeople say, I don't need this training. I'm going to be okay on the day. Whereas, we should be preparing. If it's a big client meeting, you don't want to be the big client meeting to be the first time that these words come out of your mouth. You want to drill that. You want to prep it. You want to practice it. You want to go into a room and get feedback on your presentation. All of those things. I've written, again, writing this book, The Personal Transformation Blueprint, and I'm doing it better with this second one, is you want to get feedback along the way. I'm sending now chapters to friends of mine and saying, hey, give me some feedback on this. What do you think? And I get feedback all the way along, and I'm like, okay, so I can change, I can evolve as we go along. I don't want to just write an entire book and then send it out and suddenly get all this feedback the day before it's going to go live. That would not be very helpful. So find this, find ways to break down your goals. Can you do something like a test situation before you dive into the deep end? And you'll find that a lot of people will not think about that. So just get, we had the New York Marathon here recently. A lot of people, that's the first experience of running 27 miles. No, don't do that, 26.2 miles. Do some practice runs. Don't just go straight into the deep end. It will wake you up and hurt a lot if that's your first experience of running that. But, if you've done a few 17, 18-mile runs, then, you're going to know what's to come. So this is great. And actually, the athletes at the bottom there and Chris at the top, I've stayed in touch with these guys now, phenomenal athletes, and just it's a great experience to learn from people like this. But yeah, find a way to kind of push yourself a little bit. And then, I guess when you're around these people, then you meet people that have slightly higher goals. I didn't know. I just thought, I'm just going to go and I'm going to do a bodybuilding show and I'm going to do that kind of thing. I had no concept of what comes beyond that. Maybe that was naivety. Maybe it was me not aiming high enough in the beginning. But then this question came into my head, which is what if? What if? And I met a guy, Cleon. I wasn't the list, but his name is Cleon. He's from Wales. And he was at the show and he gave me some kind of words of encouragement and congratulations at that Natural show. And then started talking about things like, the World Championships and the Natural Olympia. Like it was just a natural thing. And I was like, there's a World Championship of this? And, for those of you who know me, I'm fairly competitive. And so just planting that seed in my head just started to me think, okay, well, what if? What if? What if? I don't know. Like, what if? And, as a result of placing third, I heard about this other competition in the UK, which is the International UK competition, but I needed to win a contest. And actually later that year in the UK, I won. I came first place. And then later in the year, again, I kind of competed against some of the best athletes, or the best athletes in the UK and Europe as well, and placed sixth of that competition. And that was an interesting situation. Is that, after I'd been dieting for a long time, I needed to have a recovery period. I needed to eat some food and do all those kind of bits and pieces. But it was an eye-opener. It was an eye-opener that actually, I'm not in the wrong place. And maybe something like the Natural Olympia could be something that I should set my sights for. So we aim a little bit higher. Once we get that experience, we know we're in the right area, then we can think about aiming a little bit higher. Now, so far it seemed quite easy, right? So far I say, Dan, you go, you train, you lift, you eat. Okay, well, is it that hard? You talk about mindset, you talk about mental toughness, all those aspects, then, what's the deal with that? Let's talk a little bit about commitment and adversity. And there's 2 pictures on here, and both of them are significant for me. Let's talk about the one at the bottom first. So something that happened this year was, after the competitions in the UK last year, I kind of got all excited, thinking, I'm going to be amazing and I'm going to win all of these things. And, I kind of, did I get complacent? No, I don't think so. I was working hard, but I kind of also had that element of, things are going to go well for me. Like, I felt confident, unfounded confidence, I think, but, still a little bit confident. You've got to get into the right headspace. And we just moved to Prague. I think it was at the kind of halfway through the year, and actually the UK competition I did while I was living in Prague. And in Prague, I started playing five-a-side football with my brother-in-law. Sunday night, we just kind of have a little kick around with the boys. I learned some Czech words that I probably shouldn't repeat, but, that's how you kind of learn the language. And one Sunday night, I remember this, it was 3 weeks before the competition that would have qualified me for the European Championship and possibly the World Championship. And we're playing on a Sunday night, and the ball ends up in the middle of the pitch, and 2 of us run at the ball, me and this other guy. And I'm playing five-a-side football on a Sunday night, and he is playing in the World Cup, about to score the winning goal for the Czech Republic or something along those lines. And we both go in with that level of intensity. And let's just say my knee came off, worst for wear. I tried to stand back up and carry on playing, but I immediately fell back down and looked down, and I realized that something hurt quite a lot. I kind of hobbled off and said, everything's going to be fine. Tried to come back a minute later. It wasn't working. So I went home, iced it up, and did what every good person would do, and that's look on Google and try and diagnose my symptoms. And what it turned out is I had a medial collateral ligament strain. So I stretched the inside of my knee to a point where it was very, very painful. Luckily, Google said, for a mild strain, 1 to 3 weeks, you'll be back and everything fine. Serious one might be a little bit longer, 4 to 6 weeks. But, this was 3 weeks before competition. It meant that I couldn't train legs. I couldn't do cardio. I couldn't do any of those things. And so I ended up placing second at that competition in May and not qualifying for the Worlds and the Europeans, which was a major knock on my confidence. I was stressed and annoyed and disappointed. And that look on my face is me back in the gym, not having fun at all. And just questioning, like, what am I doing? Like, why are you doing this? You're an idiot. Why did your brother said you're going to get injured. You just ignored him. And now you've ruined this entire season. Like, all these kind of dark thoughts kind of getting to me. And it took me quite a while to get to that. I actually, from hard work on the diet, I took a lot of time off of the diet. Let's just put it that way, and kind of rebounded quite badly. That was tough. And I think there is a major mental component to winning and losing. And again, I came second. We'll talk about coming second later, but this was second where I expected to win. This is where I wanted to win, but I got beaten by a better athlete. Had I been in condition on the day, would I have won? It's difficult to say, but I knew that I did things that kind of put me out of contention, and that hurt the ego. The second one, and the picture above is Lily there on the left with my dad and my stepdad. I can't really separate the two, dad, stepdad. He's been my father since I was 4 years old. And my other dad, my biological dad, I'm extremely close with. But to be fair, I've been lucky to have 2 dads growing up. I didn't always think that. I was a teenager once. Definitely didn't say that when I was a teenager. But I think as you get older, you learn to appreciate things. And this is as Lily called him, Momo. And Momo passed away just before my second show, just before that UK DFBA debut. And he'd had an 8-year battle with cancer. And it was amazing. I remember going through that experience with him and having tests, and he had a very weird, warped sense of humor, which if you knew him, you loved everything about him. But we'd make cancer jokes that were completely inappropriate unless you were suffering from cancer or part of that circle. So it was that kind of thing. But he passed away there, and this was him, I think, just before things started to get really bad. But watching him go through cancer and chemotherapy and all of those things taught me a lot about living and how to live. And it was an amazing experience to watch him and be present through that journey. And, sadly, we knew it was going to come to an end. And, he stretched out as long as he possibly could and taught us all the lessons that he possibly could before, whatever happens at the end. So, but that was just before the competition. And a lot of people ask me, so are you going to carry on competing? Like, it'd be understandable. Family are in mourning. It's been a really tough time emotionally. Like, what are you going to do? And my answer to that was, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to carry on. To the point where I took Tupperware to his funeral and was eating chicken and rice out of a plastic container on the day that we kind of took him to get cremated. People give me weird looks, but by that point I'm used to it. The reason I decided to continue is because, believe it or not, bodybuilding is a family event. I think if it's not glamorous. Let me tell you some of the stuff that's happening. Like, my brother has rolled fake tan onto me and covered my entire body with fake tan. I've had, I can't reach my back from a kind of hair removal and shaving. So both my wife and my mum have shaved my back as part of this thing. It's not glamorous. Like, the end result is a little bit glamorous, but the process isn't always glamorous. But Momo, or Morris, was a huge fan. And I remember him being there and looking at photos from the first show and just saying, like, wow, you've done such an amazing job, and being so encouraging. And that was enough reason for me to want to carry on doing it, just for the recognition that, he was part of that journey. And I can remember being at that UK DFBA show, being backstage, and just remembering, like, I went to the bathroom, put my shorts on, and just being proud of myself, but also, proud that he was still there and watching. Just as I can't explain the feeling, and I'm not spiritual or being religious here or anything like that, but just knowing that his presence was there and that he was encouraging me even after he'd kind of gone through all of this stuff. He had to go through so much stuff himself, and yet his selflessness and just encouraging was part of the reason to continue and not a reason to quit. And I think a lot of people get things that happen to them in lives, and rightly or wrongly, and nobody would have looked at me badly if I quit or not done a competition because Morris died. But I knew that I could use that as a reason to go even more and to push even harder in his honor. So, we have these things happen. It's how we react. It's how we bounce back from these things, and how we decide to use them as a lesson that determines what happens moving forwards. I've had some amazing, I do this podcast, Personal Transformation Podcast. If you haven't listened to it, then definitely check it out. I'll put some notes in after this. But a couple of conversations recently, one with a mother who lost her son at 21 to suicide. And, she was super positive. And I said, how do you carry on? How do you carry on? And, the answer she gave is, this is a blessing. This is a lesson for me to learn. And, I used this experience and add it to my story, not in a way that is false and fake, but in a way that, integrates everything into who I am. And I just thought that was amazing. And, another conversation recently with like a world championship kiteboarder who's just had a brain aneurysm, and she now can't compete, at least for now, because all the science says it's probably a bad idea. But, she now has a different journey of recovery and actually using her knowledge and experience and passion to teach kids in different ways. So things happen to us. Things will happen to us along the way. It's about how we react. And I think I've learned from these experiences that, we just got to keep focused. And this is what mental toughness is. Mental toughness is knowing that, there's always going to be adversity and there's always going to be a challenge, but to keep going regardless, not let it affect us too much. And, smile in the face of adversity and keep kicking butt. So let's move on. Let's go to the Olympia. I'm going to show you a couple of bits and pieces first. One thing, because there was a competition. So I won a competition. I got this gold medal in Connecticut. So there was a little gap. I moved to America, and I decided that I was going to compete and push for the Olympia. after that injury. And, to be honest, there was, if we go back, think about it, there was a whole bunch of reasons why I shouldn't compete. And, moving to America, spending a month looking after my daughter, not having, all of the nutrition aspects in place. And so I actually went to this Connecticut event. I only registered on the Monday for the show on, I think, the Saturday, because I didn't think that I was entirely ready. But I won because comparisons, like we talked about earlier, comparisons important. I find actually that competing against some of the best athletes in the world, especially in the UK and then in Europe, teaches you a lot about what the expectation should be. So I won a medal. I also won this, which is super cool. I don't know if you can see this super clearly, but this is a broadsword. I'll try and get it to the full extent. But there you go. It's about 3.5 feet long. What do I do with a sword? When you have a 4-year-old, you hide it. That is what you do. You hide it. But this is the equivalent of the medal. So I was super happy to have a sword. It's something that you've never wanted, but when you get one, you suddenly realize that this is the thing that's been missing the entire time. But that is what qualified me to get to the Olympia. I knew there was another competition a couple of weeks later, so that one I kind of squeezed in and thought, well, if I don't win it, then I can go to the other competition in Phoenix. But luckily, I won it. Didn't have to go to Phoenix. Sorry, Phoenix. I'll see you next time. But that qualified me to go to the Olympia, which was terrifying, but also the goal of the experience. And when I got there, this is what it felt like. It felt like being surrounded by giants. It says that imposter syndrome is real. Whenever you push yourself to the next level, you're going to be like, oh my Lord, deer in headlights. So let's just look at a couple of these pictures around here. So at the top, you can see the medals, the checks that are on offer for the pros. I'm still an amateur athlete, but who knows what happens in the future. There's some of the prize money there. There's the team UK in the middle. So even though I'm an expat and I didn't qualify through the UK team route, I still joined Team UK as the overseas contingent. So that was great to be with the best athletes from across Great Britain who'd won competitions in England and Europe just to qualify. Qualification from Europe is a lot harder. There's my certificate of, participation, or as I call it, the certificate of recognition, if you've seen my LinkedIn post. And my number there, so 218. There's a lot of athletes at this competition, a lot of incredible athletes. And, this was me saying, okay, well, you deserve to be here. You've earned your place. And now go and show it. There was a warm-up before the event. You can see there's actually the bottom right photo. This is a guy called Jeff Saeed. I've seen him on Instagram. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers. This guy's got one of the best natural physiques. I didn't know if it was natural or not. On Instagram, hundreds of thousands of people liking all of his posts. The guy is an absolute monster. I think he won the Open Olympia in the pro side. I wasn't there for that day. But I'm looking at this thinking, what? How is this guy coming here? How am I competing on the same stage as this guy? Literally, not starstruck so much, but just wondering, like, what on earth is going on? So he was representing Team USA there. And what they did actually, this kind of photo at the bottom on the left there, is they got all the athletes up on stage, had a big team photo for all the competitors. And, you look around and there's some phenomenal athletes. And you're looking at them and you can see great white teeth there because the first layer of tan is on. But these are the best athletes in the world. And I'm on stage with them and it's like, wow, what am I doing here? And so part of me is thinking, what am I doing here? How am I surrounded by all these amazing athletes? And part of me is like, yeah, you deserve to be here, Dan. You deserve to be here. You've worked it. You've done all the work. And this is going to be a very, very fun experience. So just understand that as you step up, you're always going to be surrounded by people who you think are head and shoulders above you. You're not. Even just before I stepped on the stage, I was like, oh my God, these people are going to kill me. You deserve to be there. And the result is secondary. Just get on, do the work, have fun, show what you can do, prove it to be your best, and then, learn from the experience and do whatever comes next. So this was fun. This was just an honor to be surrounded by these people and to consider them as peers, at least for the competition. So do challenge yourself. But I remember, I've been in networking events and business events in the past as well. And, we're all just human. Yeah, some of us have had different levels of success and, that may be material or physical or competition-wise, but we're all just human, having a fun time. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, and I think we should stop taking each other serious or taking ourselves so seriously. Don't put people on pedestals and just say, hey. But also understand that during competition, we're in the zone a little bit. So maybe not the best time. Afterwards, be fun. So there we go. So that was it. And again, coming to the result, Mr. Olympia or not, well, the answer is not. It's a silver medal there. There I am representing with the Great Britain Union Jack there. It's funny because now I live in New York. The announcers called me up as Dan Storey from the USA. And when I won, or when I won this medal rather, I feel like I won. The captain from Team UK ran to the stage and threw this Union Jack on stage. And the judges were like, what are you doing? He's American. It's like, no, he just lives there. So I'm super proud to be representing there for the Great Britain team. And, I remember years ago, it was 2024, so technically 20 years ago. That was the last time I represented the UK, Great Britain. I played American football for the Great Britain Bulldogs team. And, we went to San Francisco. And that was the last time that I wore the national colors. So it's been 20 years. And so this for me was special. Right? I felt, again, part of a team. I felt like I was representing as an athlete for my country. And yeah, that is something that I feel extremely proud about. So did I win? No. Did I come second in a very, very tough contest? Yeah. I mean, there were 6 of us on stage ultimately in the final of the competition. And I remember literally lining up, because you go up on the steps and you kind of go onto the stage. And as I looked around, suddenly, you kind of trying to judge people backstage. You're like, oh, am I competing against him or him? And you don't really know. This was the hardest thing, is not knowing the level of competition I was going into. So I could only do what I could do. It's kind of blessing and also kind of stressful at the same time. But then you kind of line up, and then suddenly all of these monsters turn up from nowhere. And you're like, what? Where did these people come from? It's like scary as hell. And, it's just that idea that, you're suddenly surrounded by giants again. But as the dust settles, the mental dust settles, you can become a little bit more objective. And I remember looking, I'm like, okay, well, that guy's good, but, I can beat him in this area. And actually that guy's good there, but I think I win in this area. And recognizing that, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. And even, that you've done all the work, even though you've done the training and the diet and all that kind of prep stuff, there's still an element of competition that goes on stage. And that is where the experience comes from. That's where, when I came 6th in that UK contest, a friend of mine asked me as I came off stage, said, did you want to win? And I was like, we played football together, so he knows how competitive I'm. I'm like, of course I wanted to win, but I didn't deserve to win. I did not deserve to win. That competition where there was some of the best athletes in Europe, there's no way I'm winning. Even if I come in my best shape ever, these guys have been competing for years and years and years, and I just don't have that experience and that nuance and that understanding of what it takes to get to the top. This competition, well, almost. I'm a lot further along the line. I know a lot more, and I know that there's stuff that I can do on the day that is going to help me win and be more competitive. So I played to my strengths. I think I did a really good job, and yet there's still room to grow. So yes, silver medal in the amateur masters physique Mr. Natural Olympia competition. I am so proud of the result, and I'm so grateful for having the opportunity to compete and challenge and do everything that I could do. What would make it easier? What would make it worse is if the person who beat me wasn't such a nice guy. I hate this, man. I hate this. I got beaten by the nicest guy in the world. Not only has he got an incredible physique, I think our physiques were close. I don't think there was too much in it. But the fact was he was a genuinely nice guy. Davide lives in Flushing, so just about 20, 30 minutes away from me. We're going to hang out. We're going to train, and we're going to spend some time this year. Was it keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer? That kind of thing. But such a nice guy, such a phenomenal athlete. And, we were chatting afterwards. He was like, this is my 3rd Olympia. And like the first 2 years, he came third and third. And this is, he's finally won this one. So, I'm up against a seasoned competitor, and I'm kind of placing second to him. I'm super proud. He also entered a couple of other competitions. He got 4 gold medals in this tournament, this contest. So the guy is a phenomenal athlete and a nice guy. So am I annoyed that I didn't win? No. If I'm going to get beaten by anybody, it's going to be by this nice guy and by a phenomenal athlete and by a phenomenal physique who, just showed that across the board. I did do some research recently because I was looking into this. Is the feeling of coming second is it depends how you compare yourself. They did this study on the Olympics and looking at gold, silver, and bronze medals. And in the Olympics, you typically have a kind of placing thing, like in a game where the gold medal game, you either win gold or silver. In the bronze medal game, you either come third or fourth. And so what they found is happiness afterwards is bronze medalists feel happier than silver medalists typically because, bronze, they're comparing themselves against nothing, right? So it's either bronze or nothing. So they feel great. Silver, it's so close to gold. And so they often feel cheated a little bit. And so the happiness aspect of coming first, second, or third is quite interesting. But in this one, I think for me, my comparison is 0. Like it's when I stood just off the stage, I was like, I'm in trouble. These guys are amazing. And so to get silver, I'm so happy with that. And to place second to a phenomenal athlete like this, I'm just, yeah. But there's work to do, right? There's work to do. So I'm happy, but I also know that there's work to do. All right, what else we got? There's a couple more slides and then we'll get into it. I think there's one more. So gratitude. This is a big one. We got to enjoy the process. We've got to enjoy the journey. And, that involves winning, losing, taking part, pre-game, post-game, during the game, all of the aspects. And so this is just me being grateful and trying to have fun. And there's a few things. Like that's the top picture. That's Cleon. This is the Welsh guy who even just started me on the journey. We've done a podcast. He won it last year. He won the overall this year. This guy's a phenomenal athlete, and I hope he goes pro because he's going to be getting a year older. He'll come into my category then, and I don't want to be facing him just yet. What an incredible athlete. On the left-hand side there's me with a medal and my T-shirt. This is my coach. This is my brother. Like, my brother's put a ton of work into making sure that I have the understanding and the kind of conditioning that I do. And I won my medal based on conditioning. And, that's a lot of intensity in the gym, but that's also a lot of the prep and the mindset stuff that he helps me with. So, thanks to my brother for that. The one at the bottom is immediately just afterwards. And, I don't know if you can see it. It looks like I'm wearing pink lipstick, but there's definitely some tears in my eyes there. This is, a recognition. Just, you should be proud of yourselves. Whenever we accomplish something like this, we should definitely be proud. So, there's me with a little moment, just recognition. I'm also missing my family a little bit there. So, one thing that I am very proud of is that, my daughter has seen me do this during her formative years. So she's almost 5 years old. She's 4.5. She's just in kindergarten next door. But one of the things she calls me is Daddy Muscles. And my wife, before every competition, will do a little recording of her saying good luck and, be backstage to watch that just before you go on stage. Like even right now, I'm like, oh man, it's too much. So, I'm super grateful for the lessons that I'm teaching. And, it's not just my daughter that I'm impacting. There's been a lot of encouragement messages coming from other people that, they see what I'm doing and they're inspired by it. So that's super cool. It's kind of why I do this, right? And then at the bottom right, there you go. There's Cleon. In the middle is Nigel, who is also on Team UK. He's a phenomenal Grandmasters athlete. There was so many athletes over the age of 60 at this thing. It's just, age is but a number. Let's get it done, people. So that was just an incredible experience of just being around people that are going to understand like the craziness that you go through. Not everybody gets bodybuilding. I appreciate you guys standing on here, but find people in your journey who are going to be cheerleaders and going to encourage you and do these things. And now I've got this amazing group of individuals, and you've got Bobby and Keon and Ali there. Ali was the captain. He's the guy pointing at the pro card on the middle picture. He's the one that threw the flag at me. And Joe is another phenomenal athlete. He's a pro athlete in kind of my class. That's the next level that I need to aim for. And he's just a phenomenal competitor. Just, again, genuinely nice guy. It's really annoying when these people are nice guys. But now this is it. It's, you know, it's about the friends you make along the way. It's about the journey. It's about having fun. There's a couple of people not on here. There's, you know, Bobby. Bobby, if you're listening, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I couldn't have got around Vegas. I couldn't have done it without you. Bobby's a good friend of mine from back home. We've known each other for years. We changed a tire on the side of the was it M4, M25 junction. He's moved to Vegas, and he was kind of my chauffeur gopher guy. It just, I couldn't do prep and get everything ready without him. Obviously, my family. You know, my wife just being supportive and patient. Gina for putting us up and helping us, you know, be comfortable and finding some bedding that I didn't have to get fake tan all over. So, you know, super lucky. There's a ton of people along the way. My brother, who was on holiday, couldn't make it. My mum for shaving my back and just, you know, constantly questioning if I was okay. And, you know, all right, you know, are you sure you should be eating? Even just those things, it's just a reinforcement that I don't need you to understand. I just need you to appreciate that I'm challenging myself to be the best I can be. And, you know, just everyone for giving such nice words and believing in me, because, you know, as you go through this journey, there's a lot of times where you do feel super confident. I'm going to crush it. So I'm going to do some amazing things. And then there's times where you look in the mirror and you're like, I feel fat. I feel bloated. I'm holding water. And, you know, you get on the scales every day because you're trying to make sure you're kind of staying consistent. And sometimes you go up a bit and you're like, no, what happened? And you just, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. And when you've got no carbs in you, then you definitely get grumpy. So all those ups are, you know, mild, but the downs are pretty tough. So yeah, staying in the zone and doing all those things. But what a phenomenal experience. And you know, thanks to the promoters for putting on an incredible show. Thanks for everybody else backstage, the friends that I've made, the people that I've got to meet, you know, the podcast guests that I've spoken with and explored their thing. All of these things have gone into giving me a mindset to be able to compete and challenge myself and, you know, and just really push the limit and push the boundary of what I thought was capable. You know, there's, you know, a lot. I've watched a lot of David Goggins. I'm not going to lie. And while I didn't have to do too much cardio, but you know, it's you know, it's the idea that, you know, we've got so much inside of us in terms of capacity that we hold ourselves back mentally to what we think we're actually, or, you know, find out what we're actually capable of. From a physical perspective, I've never been as tired and hungry in this whole journey as I have been in this period. But I made it. You know, I made it. I challenged myself. I pushed hard. I did the things that I needed to do. And, you know, actually I came through it. You know, I can do it for a season. You better believe that I ate some food afterwards, trust me. But, you know, you do. And, you know, now, as like I said, as an author, now I kind of channel that focus into writing and typing and researching and trying to find stories and things along those lines. So, you know, the work is there. You know, do I feel as confident with the writing thing? No, but I know it's a journey. So I'm going to keep doing it and keep pushing. And you know, will I find myself on the Natural Olympia stage of writing? Who knows? But, you know, we're on the path. So amazing experience, amazing, phenomenal experience. And I look forward to doing it all again next year. But before that, we'll have a little break and enjoy myself and you know, reconnect with all those things. I'm going to leave it with this quote, which is, you know, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So what does it mean? Like I said, the goal itself is fleeting. It just happens. It's quickly done. And, you know, this kind of climax of everything coming together, it quickly fades. And then you find yourself the next day, well, what do you do? And for me, it was back to work, you know, put the slightly different t-shirt on, but get back in the gym and know that there's work to be done. You know, do I feel different as second place Mr. Olympia? Not so much, a little bit. You know, have I had people stopping me on the street and asking me for my autograph? No, it's surprisingly that, you know, the Natural Olympia is not the biggest competition in the world. It's not the Super Bowl. It's actually not even the proper Mr. Olympia with the phenomenal athletes of the kind of the performance enhancing side. But those guys are just phenomenal. You know, they're the kind of celebrities of the game. We're in the kind of a more niche area. So yeah, no autographs on the street. Nobody's stopping me in the gym saying, oh my goodness, you look phenomenal. Like, can you just sign my biceps or something? That hasn't happened. It's just me with my headphones on, with my hoodie on, getting the work done. Because I know that, next year is going to come around before too long, and I've got work to do in that time. I've got to train hard. I've got to eat right. I've got to have some fun. But yeah, next year is going to be the competition again. So before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment / Olympia, chop wood, carry water. I think it just changes the appreciation I have for it. It's somebody asked me how am I feeling, and there's a real joy element that comes when there's no pressure on the process. Before the competition, every workout has to be the best workout. Every meal has to be, the best meal and the most refined food and like just tidy. Afterwards, you're like, I can chill out a little bit. I can enjoy it. And I think that's what taking the pressure off is I've enjoyed every workout that I've had. I've enjoyed every meal that I've had this week, and there's been some phenomenal meals involved. But I can do these things with a smile on my face. It's no different. The thing is no different. It's just the approach is different. So if anything, that's what I'd say is that, do the things. It's the approach, how we do things. The journey is the most important part. So hopefully that was insightful and gave you kind of an idea of behind the scenes. Now, quickly, if you are ready to start your own transformation, be that in fitness, or be that in health, or be that in your career, or be that in business, or be that in like a creative pursuit, like an artist or a writer, or be that in a relationship, or traveling the world, or sorting your finances out, whatever those areas are of your life, then I can highly recommend this book. So this is Personal Transformation Blueprint. And, I've kind of hinted at a few of the things that helped me write this book, that a lot of it has come from my experiences as a bodybuilder, but also the research that I've done over the years into psychology and decision science and aspects on that. And, really what this talks about is three of those elements that we've talked about today, which is the first one is setting yourself a goal and leveling up your expectation and looking at where you are right now, looking in the mirror and changing how you react to see yourself as, wherever you are. If you are stuck in the trap of average, is to say, I am stuck in the trap of average and I could potentially push myself to another level. So changing the expectation, not getting frustrated and dissipating that energy, but harnessing that energy and channeling it into something that is super exciting and aligns with your goals and your ambitions. Second part is understanding that as soon as you set that big goal, your brain's going to kick in and go, nope, it's not going to happen. And, like I said, is who we are today is a result of all the experiences we've had. We know who we are, but if we want to be someone radically different, let's say there's a big goal that we want to experience, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to think, act, behave differently. And our old identity is going to get confused, say that's not who we are. And you say it is now. And it's crossing that gap, that mindset gap, that is such an important part. And, whether you call that imposter syndrome or self-doubt or however you call it, we've got to do things to help cross that mindset gap. And, some of the things are getting a path and a process that we have to follow, but then it's really just following that process. And we haven't really talked about it today so much, but discipline is such a big part of that. It's just showing up, doing the work, whether you feel like it or not. If I think about my workouts, not every workout was great. I'd say 1 in 3 was great. 1 in 3 was absolutely terrible. 1 in 3 was like, that's okay, we've got some work done. Now when I'm writing, some of my, sometimes I'm in flow. I can't write fast enough. My fingers don't move fast enough. And sometimes I sit here and stare at the screen, and I'd say 1/3 I'm writing in flow, 1/3 I'm staring at the screen, and 1/3 I'm just typing words. And it feels, a little bit robotic, but I'm getting it done, So understand that at some point during that journey, you're going to have a realization. And the realization is, oh, okay, this is starting to come together. And whether that's, you look in the mirror and suddenly like, hey, where did those abs come from? Or you look at the computer and you're like, hey, where did that kind of first draft come from? Is the process will be the process. It doesn't matter. You just follow it. You do the work. You show up. Things are going to happen. The last part is work. Let's talk about work. And from a bodybuilding perspective, it's difficult to think about other people doing your workout. You can't hire someone to do your press ups. You can't do that. You got to put in the work. And this isn't a a quick fix. If you want something good in life, you can't think of it as a microwave meal. You got to be prepared to put in the effort and put in the hours and the time that it takes to create something valuable and create something meaningful. I was having a conversation the other day. A lot of people say, oh, I like to get, bigger arms or a nice round butt or something like that. And, can we do it in 2 weeks? Like 2 weeks? Come on, be realistic. How long have you been treating yourself that way and you think you just fix it in 2 weeks? So if that's your kind of expectation, I say aim higher. What does that look like? Set a bigger goal, but also understand that timeline is the biggest thing. And what we can do, in 2 weeks versus 2 years is very different. Like I said, this whole journey for me has been it's almost 3 years now since I started this kind of competing. And remember, I started from a fairly strong place. I've been training my entire life. So the physical side, the training, lifting, the musculature, that was all there. It was just the other side of the equation, which was the discipline and showing up. So, but 3 years ago, if you'd asked me like, Dan, do you want to win Natural Olympia? I'm like, what? Don't be crazy. It's such a big gap. But now looking back, it's easy to think about that. And so as I look forward and think about my goals, what do I want to be in 3 years or 5 years? Then, who knows? But I've got a path and I know I'm on it. So, personal transformation blueprint talks about 3 months. You can do a lot in 3 months. You can change a huge amount. But if you carry it on and if you really embed that work ethic and that mindset and, play with your vision board and keep that going, raise the bar a little bit, then you'll be amazed what you can create. So that's it. Grab yourself a copy, Personal Transformation Blueprint. That's on Amazon. And if you registered for the webinar, then you should also have a link to be able to get a signed hardback copy. So I'll share that after this as well. So let's just go ahead and stop the share. So thank you very much for joining. I know there's a couple of questions. So I'm going to go through those now. If you've got any other questions, put them into the chat box. Let me just come back here and turn the screen share off. There we go. Back. I'm going to take a quick drink of coffee because I put the work in. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. Let me do coffee. Coffee was, like I said, coffee was a big part of the journey. So many health benefits, mostly waking up because I train at 5:30 in the morning. Actually, when we were in Prague, I was training at 4:30 in the morning, which is insane. So let's just jump to a couple of questions. So, question one: what was the first meal after the competition? Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of food that it's crazy. Instagram knows you're on a diet. I swear that Instagram knows you're on a diet, and so. When you're in those last stages of prep, it's throwing all of the opportunities for you to eat crazy food. So I'm going to talk about two that I had. First one was burgers. Okay, so we went to Red Rooster, I think, in Las Vegas. There's a diner just outside Silverado, which is where we were staying. And, had a burger with bottomless sides. So we ordered some fries. They're bottomless sides. Again, this, as an English guy in America, I love this stuff. But yeah, had some bottomless sweet potato fries. So definitely got a few baskets of sweet potato fries in, a very nice burger, and some Diet Coke. Just because don't want to waste your calories. So that was the first one. Then the following day, we went to Nielsen's frozen custard, which was incredible. Like again, this is one that I saw on Instagram. They take this frozen custard. It's custard because it's got ice cream with egg and makes it thicker, really good. And they blitz, it's like a milkshake, but they blitz kind of things in. So I had a chocolate milkshake or chocolate ice cream with Hershey's or Reese's peanut butter cups mixed in. Lily had, and because again, talk about sacrifice. I missed out on ice cream and cake and all those things with Lily, so I took her there. She had 2 scoops of chocolate cherry ice cream in a cone. It was bigger than her face. It was massive. I love, this is one of the things I do love about the US and food is that it's completely ridiculous in terms of the sizing of things. But when you do it, it looks amazing for Instagram. So those are my 2 first meals, a burger and some fries. Cool. Next question. Am I going to go pro? We will see. I think there's a couple of things that I want to think about before going pro. Number one is that the pro athletes are just a phenomenal standard, and I see the what that would take and what it would mean to be competitive. I wouldn't win. I wouldn't place top 3 in any of the competitions at the moment. I do have a off season there to grow and put on some size and see how that goes. But as an athlete, a masters athlete, it's going to take a long time for me to grow. And also there's unfinished business right in the amateur category. So let's see what happens. But I'm going to enjoy the off season. I'm going to start eating again. I'm not going to make the same mistakes as ballooning as last time. So I'm going to do a nice reverse diet, calmly find some kind of homeostasis and balance from a weight perspective. Given that I've already put 2.5 kilos on in less than a week, that was 3 kilos at one point, but we'll see. A lot of that hopefully is water weight. But I don't want to go crazy and do anything. So we're going to enjoy the off season, and we'll see what happens next year and where I'm feeling. But yeah, at the moment, unfinished business with the Amateur Olympia that I want to resolve first. Okay, any more questions? Any more questions coming in? What was the food that I missed the most? I don't think it was the food so much. It was just the experience and like things that I could do with my family and my daughter. We just moved to New York and I'm dieting, and there's a place around the corner, Paletas. It's this new ice cream thing, and it's like you basically choose an ice cream as flavor, and then you dip it in chocolate or some kind of sauce, then you put sprinkles on it, and just having to watch that, with my family, they're really enjoying it. And I'm a massive sweet tooth. So that was one. Taco Tuesdays as well, just around the corner. We found some great place for Taco Tuesdays. I can't really eat off plan, so I definitely can't have a beer. I did have one. Don't tell anyone. But it's this idea that we have to sacrifice. But it's not a no. This is one thing that I've kind of come to terms with. It's not a no. It's just a not now. It's not a not now. So I can do it. I can just do it next week or the week after. Or it depends when it is. But saying no to things allows you to say yes to something bigger. So that's something that I've just come to terms with. And people say I'm so disciplined and so much willpower. I'm like, nah, I just got a different focus. It's not that I'm not going to have it. It's just I'm not going to have it right now. So, I think that was it. Biggest mindset challenge for the journey. Biggest mindset challenge. I think from the early days, it was discipline. And do I have discipline? Can I show up and do things on a regular basis? Because I've never actually had that experience. I don't think I'd ever done it. I trained hard when I was younger, and I had a condition around me. So when I played football, I mentioned I played American football. There was the team. You had team structure. You structured trainings. You turned up on certain times. Now I had to build it all for myself. My brother helped in terms of planning things out, but I effectively had to create that schedule for myself, and that was probably the hardest thing. And I mentioned a moment ago, there's a question coming there about timing and what time I wake up. I train in the morning before my daughter goes to school. That's intentional because I need to be there as a dad. My number one job is a dad. I'm an amateur athlete. I have to keep telling myself. And so my primary role is as a father and kind of do that. So if I want to do this bodybuilding thing, it can't interfere with her routine. So, here the gym opens at 5:30 and she typically wakes up about 7:15. That's my time. That's my window. Do I want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning? No. Nobody wants to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy. But you do it because that's when it happens. When we were in Prague and I was training in Prague, we would wake up as a family at 6 because she starts school at 7:15, 7:30 or something along those lines. And we had to drive and it would take some time. We had to get ready. So I had to be home by 6, which meant I trained at 4:30. Seems even crazier, right? So I was up at 4:15. Luckily, the gym's been fairly close, so if I had to go any further, then I'd be in trouble. But I remember reading a book called The 5 a.m. Club. This is, I think, Robin Sharma wrote it. And, 5 a.m. Club, I tried it once, and I was like, yeah, 5 a.m. Next day, no, 5:15, 5:30, and I quickly fell back into it because I didn't have a goal. I didn't have a reason. And, this is something that I've noticed as well is goals are great. like I had the goal of getting sub 10% body fat for many, many years and never did it. Never did it. I had the goal of waking up at 5 a.m. and never did it. It's because that goal is a means to an end. If you don't have an end, like a bigger goal, you're never going to achieve those mini goals. So it wasn't until I set the challenge of competing that I was able to do some of these bigger and better things. You know, I find it hard to wake up at 5 o'clock when I just had to wake up at 5 o'clock for the sake of waking up at 5 o'clock. But when I had to wake up at 4 o'clock, because that was the time I needed to train to be world champion, or at least almost world champion, then it was easy. Like, was I tired? Yes. That's why coffee. Like, come on. You know, you're not going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and just go, yay, ready to go. I know some speakers, motivational speakers will say, yeah, they don't set their alarm and they jump out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, fair play. Like, sometimes I did. Sometimes I'm there at 3:58, 3:59. Like, yeah, ready. Definitely not on legs days. But, you know, sometimes I'm there and I'm awake before my alarm, and I still do that now. But most days I wake up feeling tired, and I have to motivate myself. Like, motivation isn't always there, but discipline is there. Like, the journey is set. So, yeah, I wake up early. So discipline was one of the biggest challenges. And then, yeah, the imposter syndrome one was a tough one. It took me a long time to recognize myself as a bodybuilder, and not just physically, but mentally. And you know, there was one time where I looked in the mirror and I caught a glimpse of somebody that I didn't recognize. And it was me. And the reason I didn't recognize it is because it looked like an athlete. And I literally can remember this, literally double taking. Go, who's that? And that was the point where I realized that I've been following the process for long enough, but I hadn't recognized. Remember, you know, when you go see your grandkids when you're younger, they're like, oh my, haven't you grown? When you look in the mirror every single day, you don't see that change. It's just the same as yesterday. It takes like your grandparents say, oh, you're so much bigger. So I didn't have that comparison, but one day I just noticed it. It was like, wow, okay, something happened. I don't know what happened, but it filled me with confidence. And so up until that point, I had a lot of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and was I ever going to do it? And, you know, luckily with bodybuilding and fitness is really easy. It's like the formula, and I know people argue about this, but it's fact, you can't argue with it really, but, you know, it's the internet, is that if you want to lose weight, if you want to lose body fat, then your calories in have to be less than your calories out. It's called the calorie deficit. And so if you do that for long enough, you're going to lose body fat. And if you train hard enough, you're going to maintain muscle mass. And if you eat enough protein, that's going to support the muscle mass. And so if you do those things over a period of time, you will lose body fat, you'll maintain muscle mass, and you will look lean. Like it's you can't argue with that. So the process is set. Same with writing. If you write 2,000 words a day, no matter how good or bad they are, at some point you're going to have a book. And then if you edit that book and make those words better, then you're going to have a good book. That's the kind of thing. But you have to go through the process. It's not going to happen today, tomorrow. It's a good process. So change the timeline, change your expectation. But that was a big one. That was a big one for me. Was mindset and imposter syndrome. I wasn't sure if I'd ever do it, but here I am. And so as long as you got a path, as long as you got a process, and you trust that process, and you know it's going to work, then yes, the only challenge, the question is timeline, and you can accelerate timeline with intensity. So there we go. Okay, any more questions? The books we'll be talking about. So next book is called Unstuck. I think the hardest part of getting anything happening is to get unstuck. Is we get stuck, we get caught in this trap of average. And you know, the research I've done over the years, and my master's degree is in behavioral psychology, and you know, our mind is wired in a way to keep us stuck. It kind of keeps us in this loop and actually reinforces the status quo, whereas actually what we want to do is challenge and break the status quo. And so the principles behind Unstuck is we're going to look at the behavioral psychology that says it's not your fault that you get stuck, but it is your responsibility to get unstuck. So that's going to be the next one. And then the other book that is in draft, and you may have seen a picture of me on Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, is this idea of bulletproof. And you know, we've got to become mentally tougher. We've got to become not immune to the criticism and the feedback, but we've got to learn how to take that on without getting knocked off our path. And so mental toughness is something that I've done a lot of work with over the last couple of years. And you know, if you're interested in mental toughness, drop me a line on the website, because I have a mental toughness assessment. So if you want to check that out, do so. But mental toughness is probably the biggest key to keeping going. And so, we're going to explore that in this concept of bulletproof. So bulletproof mindset is that, there's a quote in The Matrix where Neo says to Morpheus, he says, so you're telling me that at the time, when time comes, I can dodge bullets? And Morpheus says, no, Neo, I'm telling you that when that moment comes, you won't need to. It's such a great quote. I love that. And The Matrix movies is phenomenal. But so there you go. So a couple of books that are in planning stage at the moment and one actively being written. But you'll see those coming out next year. I'm gonna say next year. Hopefully early next year for Unstuck, whatever early is, and then later in the year the Bulletproof Mindset one. Stay tuned. And they complement nicely the Personal Transformation Blueprint. But again, like I say, you haven't got the copy of this, get a copy. If you want a signed copy, I'll send you guys a link after this webinar and just put your details in and let me know who you need to make it out to. But team, thank you very much. I am now going to go and enjoy the rest of my coffee. For me, it's meal 2 time of the day because I'm staying on track. I'm going to hide the broadsword. I'm going to put that away because the little one will come home later. Just wanted to say thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for encouraging me. And just genuinely thank you for being part of this journey. Like I said, the identity that I see myself as having, and this is again part of the Personal Transformation book, is I want to create this avatar or archetype, is I want to be a motivational athlete. I want to use the stories that I have from competition, from training, from pushing myself, from testing my own limits. I want to use those as metaphors and stories to share with you, to encourage you to go and do the same. So as a motivational athlete, I hope this has been a journey. You've taken some things from it, but thanks for the encouragement. And let's see what we can do next year after a little rest. All right, so enjoy the rest of your day, and until I see you next time, then challenge yourself, push your limits, and let's keep encouraging each other to do a little bit more.